All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, welcome to those that are here. I hope everyone can hear me. Uh,
Yep,
so,
sounds good.
okay. So, who are you talking to today? Well, it's myself, Sam Sturgeon. I'm the global head of marketing sciences at Holland Partners, and I've got degrees in advanced statistics, been doing this for 15 plus years, love it. And my co host is Todd. Take it away, Todd.
Sure, yeah. So my name's Todd Humphreys. I've been with Holland Partners for almost 20 years now. So I'm in their software development team. So I've been specializing in developing market simulators, the predictive market simulators for 20 years, and data visualization and some of those things. So it's been really fun. It's something I enjoy. It's fascinating, and I love it. It's great.
So just know that you've been warned. Today you're talking to an advanced statistician and a computer programmer, but we hope to keep things light and informative and exciting. So what we want to talk about today is why pricing matters, especially now in an era of high inflation, when a lot of companies' costs are going up, so prices are going up. But just to begin, pricing, it's one of the 4 P's of marketing, right? Product, promotion, place. These are core. So I think, though, personally, that pricing is one of the most difficult, but it's one that a lot of times gets underlooked, except for now recently, because prices are kind of in flux, costs are going up. But if you nail pricing, then you can increase brand loyalty, market share, all those things. But the cost of a wrong decision can be pretty bad. It can affect your brand, but also affect your margins. You don't want to leave money on the table and you don't want to lose to the competition. One of the challenges, though, especially recently, as we've mentioned, is inflation. So prices continue to rise, but consumer values are changing again. So we saw like a huge rush to purchase, which somewhat drove inflation. And now we're getting a little bit of a cooling off, right? A lot of companies have a lot of inventory. Uh, and even though some companies are raising prices, look at Tesla, they just recently cut prices. So it's an interesting time, especially since a lot of companies are looking to cut costs. And one of the ways they do that often is by reducing their marketing spend. And typically they tend to de-invest in branding and move more towards just direct product marketing. But what we've found at Holland Partners is that brands that invest in hard times, they tend to do a little better. So really your pricing changes, your cost cutting really should be informed by the strength of your brand. So I know brand price trade-offs can be a specific uh, statistical model, but we just want to point out that your brand strength, right? Obviously, that's driven by brand perception, but it can drive brand loyalty, it can drive revenue, it can drive market share, but also the other way happens as well, right? That your brand strength really should be informing your pricing decisions. And one thing I love about doing, well, we'll get to that in a minute, but how to measure price, right? So again, this is one of the 4 P's. People are often looking for how to do it. 2 of the common ways people do it, and we do a lot of these at Holland Partners, are Van Westendorp or Gabor Granger. I'm not going to go in detail about these because you're probably familiar with it. Just to say that both are fairly easy to use, especially a Van Westendorp, because you just ask 4 questions, right? You ask a respondent to say, at what price would this be too cheap that you would consider it junk? At what price would you consider this product to be a bargain? At what price would it be expensive, but I'd still consider? And then at what price would you view this as too expensive, you wouldn't consider it? In a Gabor Granger, you basically give people a series of prices, right? You describe a product and then you say, would you be willing to pay this much or more? If they say, well, that's too expensive, then you stop. Or if they say, well, I might be willing to pay more, then you give them a new price and you repeat this task 3, 4 times to see at what price do they begin to say, I probably wouldn't be willing to pay that. And it's nice because you can get demand curves like you see here by segment even that kind of tell you like, oh, this is how much revenue we would generate based on specific costs. So I don't want to say they're not helpful. It's a great tool. The only thing I would say though is the results tend to be a little more directional than definitive, really well suited for new products, it's a little hard to use either of these models to determine how much could we raise prices in the current market. And one of the main reasons for that is both of these are subject to respondents trying to game the system. Oh, I've got this company doing a survey. Here's my chance to tell them I want to pay the least amount possible. So, what follow up research shows is that about 30% of respondents will actually spend more than they stated in a survey that they were willing to spend. So, that's why it can be hard to use these to really look at how much could we increase prices. And the other big one is these type of price tags don't really simulate consumer choice because they don't have competitors involved and they don't have trade-off. But one thing would add is it's really hard to measure the impact of your brand on the pricing decision, and especially difficult to measure the impact of competition or what else is going into the market. So how do we measure price and brand? It's a good question. We believe that really you've got to have pricing studies designed that mimic human behavior. So they have to simulate kind of what are the decisions and trade-offs that consumers are making. And with the right design, you can actually capture and at least account for a lot of these behavioral tendencies, and really narrow down with a fairly high level of accuracy pricing recommendations and even revenue generating opportunities. So how do we do this? Well, kind of the gold standard are choice models. Your most basic are a brand price trade-off, right? Where all you're looking at is how much more could you charge, or what would you pay looking at specific brands. In the middle are kind of your straightforward conjoints, and then you can get super complex discrete choice models. And the reason we like discrete choice models is the research designs can be tailored to really fit specific business questions and needs. There's almost no limit to the creative applications you can use in discrete choice models. You can do split samples, you can do all sorts of things to really test specific client and business questions. And we're going to get into that a little bit during the seminar today. So where do these models come from? Well, they're based on the work of Daniel McFadden, right? He won the Nobel Prize in 2000 for his work on discrete choice models. And he began by looking at how do people choose where to live, who to marry. He really wanted to look at these big life decisions. And he found that even though you couldn't necessarily capture all the variables that are entailed in human choice, using Bayesian statistical models, uh, you have a lot of flexibility. You can borrow data from one respondent and the other. One of the challenges, though, is that the software to really calculate these models well has only existed for about 25 years. So it's interesting to me. I don't want to sound ageist, but occasionally, all older colleagues in the field, they will say like, we didn't do any of that in school, or we never studied those types of models, largely because they weren't around and they weren't practical. But a lot of young graduates today, they grow up in market research, being familiar with conjoints, knowing how to do it. But really, it allows you to borrow data from some participants to get a complete picture of the whole. But what we love is you can account for what consumers choose, what they didn't choose, and really get a look population-wide at what's happening. So what do these discrete choice models look like? Here's a somewhat simple example. You have consumers choose. Now, like most market research models, sampling really is, are you talking to the right people is the most important question, right? If you're, like in this example, we're looking at TVs. If you're not talking to someone who's buying a TV in the next year, your data is probably not as good. But typically, we'll have respondents do 12 to 15 of these tasks where we give them 3 to 5 options. And we just say, given this list of features, this price, which of these products is most appealing to you? So they pick one, but then we ask them, okay, that was your favorite out of these 4, but how likely in the real world would you be to actually purchase the one you chose? To even get a better idea, not only of what's preferred, but what are respondents actually going to choose. You give this to 500 respondents, 12 to 15 screens each, 4 products each. You've got a wealth of information now on consumer preferences that you can use to estimate a lot of different models. So what are the benefits of choice models? Well, they mimic natural choice decisions. You include the trade-offs that consumers have to go through. Also, your choice task can include competitors' offerings, and even if you create the right simulator, you can look at likely changes in competitors' offerings. So, hey, what would happen if a competitor added this feature? Or what would it look like if our competitor were to increase their prices, let's say 8%, but we increased our prices 10%? What might market share look like after that? The thing we love, though, is choice modeling shows the power of each attribute or feature of a product. And one of those main features is brand. How directly is your brand driving the appeal? And for us, really, this is the most accurate way to assess the power of your brand. We hear that a lot, that we're a brand consulting firm, and we have a lot of measures of brand health, momentum, trustworthiness, those sorts of things. But oftentimes we'll hear stakeholders say, yeah, but I want a metric that really tells me not just is my brand healthy, but what is a healthy brand getting me? And these discrete choice models allow you to do that. So you can look at a product and say, okay, for comparably spec'd products, your brand demands a 15% premium, controlling for all other attributes. That's a very straightforward, very interpretable, directly interpretable way to say this is the value of our brand. So we tell a lot of companies, especially the marketing teams, if your stakeholders are not sure about whether it's worth the money to invest in brand, here's a great way to look at that. Measure the price premium your brand, can command at time one. Measure that same thing at time two and see, was there a change? Was there a drop? Was it linked to investment in brand or just straight product? Anyway, it's a great measure. The other thing we like is, and Todd's going to show you some great examples of this, is you can simulate the future like we talked about. What's going to happen if a competitor comes in with a new product with this feature set? Or what would happen if we raised prices? Or what would happen, just all these what if scenarios that you can play with that give you pretty good data simulating market opportunity based on consumer preferences. And the fifth reason we listed here that we love it is the results can be optimized by manipulating decision drivers. So you can use these results to figure out what's the optimal price, what's the optimal feature set, should we bundle, should we not bundle? We've helped a lot of software companies figure out, should we charge on a subscription basis, a one-time fee? Is it better to bundle features, not bundle features? Anyway, we've gotten really good information and data on all of these common topics. Now, I do want to put a caveat out as Todd begins to show you what this looks like in action. A lot of what we're going to show you can be done on Sawtooth software, and we use that product daily. It's a wonderful software package, but just note that some of the things we're going to show you today go a little above and beyond what's capable through a lot of the off-the-shelf software packages, but they've created a lot of meaning. Again, well-designed studies get really well-crafted information and data to help inform decisions. So with that, I'm going to turn the time over to Todd, who's going to give you a demonstration of what we're talking about.
All right. Thanks, Sam. Let me know. You can see my screen?
Yep.
Great. All right. So this is an example of a fairly typical what we call an IDT. It's an interactive decision tool. So it's a market simulator. Let me just explain what you're looking at here just a little bit before we dive into answering questions. So this is a simulator based on consumer electronics TVs, basically what Sam showed us in the task. On the left side over here, we've got a bunch of alternatives or products that are available in the market that we're simulating. On the right, it shows the configuration of the feature set or attributes, whichever you want to call it, of the products. So we can see brand A is a 46-inch TV. It's LCD, not 3D, ultra thin. And as I come down through this list here, I can see that the different feature sets of the products that are in the market. So that's kind of our configuration area. Down at the bottom, we have results. So if these 18 products were available, we could expect that product one, this brand A would get 11.9% of the share of market. So, and then down at the bottom, other none, these are the people that during the task said that they wouldn't buy any of the products that they were shown. And so we have basically a full 100% shares of the TVs that will be purchased. These could be, if brand A was our brand versus our competitor brands. And then we have a tabular view, so you can easily see what's going on there. So to jump into answering some questions and how we can use this to answer some questions, one of the questions was, how do we know how to price our products? And in here, we have a bunch of stuff that's automated. You could come in here and play what if. You could come and you could like set a comparison here, and we're looking at product one here, and I could say, well, what if I lowered my price to 1,400? What does that do? And you can see that my share just went up from 11, almost 12% up to 13. Or you could say, what if I raised my price? What does that do? And you can play what if I made it thin versus ultra thin, or we added 3D, and you can play what if and see what can we do? What does the future look like? It doesn't really help with pricing, but it does help us see what we're doing with share. I'm going to reset this here back to where it was when we first started. One way you can check for pricing is we have demand curves. And what this module does is it runs through one product at all of their price points. It starts at the lowest price point and goes clear up to the highest. And it says, what would my expected share be? And share is great. And you can see as you increase share, or as you increase price, your share decreases. You're going to have less people buying in, and that's helpful, but you can see how fast people are dropping off. But what's really cool is when we map this against revenue, we see that we're gaining a lot more revenue, even though we're losing people. The increase in price is still more than the decrease in people. And up here, we can see that this is peaking out clear around 1,700 is where our max is. And that would be the optimal price point to maximize your revenue. And so this is saying that we can increase our prices up to at least this point without really hurting revenue and actually not even hurting our brand too much. If we go back to this forecaster, this product was at 1,600. And based on the demand curves, we should be able to go up to 17. So we're leaving a little bit of money on the table by pricing our TV at the 1,600. We could go up just a little bit.
And
we
this
can
is
gain a little
actually
bit more
kind
revenue.
of, yeah, it's kind of fun because we've had a few clients that are surprised to learn they probably could be charging more.
Yeah.
So let's say a 10% increase in price due to inflation, we show them like it's probably not, if anything, it's only going to increase your revenue. It's not going to hurt your brand a whole lot.
Yep. And this is a little bit not typical. These curves are pretty extreme. A more typical example of a curve would be something like this, where we're testing just below maybe the optimal, and we're seeing how high we can go. A lot of people find themselves just on the right side of this curve, but you never know where you're going to land. And so this is a great tool to quickly and easily find what's my optimal price point to maximize revenue. Another thing that Sam mentioned is, how do we place a value on brand? What is my brand worth? How much, like he said, is this a 10% surcharge versus other brand? We have the sensitivities, and what sensitivities will tell us is it will show us the power of each attribute. And so this is basically running through every possible change on this forecaster tab, on the simulate tab, and it's saying, what's the expected result for making these changes? And we can see that price is a huge driver where it's going to change the most. I'm going to go back to share for a second. And so price is our biggest driver. Next is actually brand. So our brand, and we can't change our brand, obviously, but it's really interesting to see how our brand lies with other brands. And then we can see some of these other attributes, what's actually driving preference. This doesn't really give us a value of our brand necessarily. It could say, in comparison with brand G, brand A is almost twice as preferred. But we could also change this to revenue. And our revenue here is taking our price and it's multiplying it by 1,000 units. So if we were to sell 1,000 units in the marketplace, we could expect this much increase in revenue. So brand G relative to brand A is about a 90, well, we'll divide this by 1,000 because we're 1,000 products. So it's about $90 more. So you could charge $90 more than an identical product that brand G was selling if you're brand A. So that right there gives you a value. Your brand is worth $90 more per unit. And you could figure out, well, my price of a unit is 12,000. And so we could charge a 7% surcharge just because of our brand. And that gives you a really powerful indication of your brand value. We see this in the
And
marketplace with Apple and some other brands. Tesla, they can charge a surcharge just because of their brand. Go ahead, Sam.
no, it's interesting. You look at Apple, right? And every time we say this, we'll say you take two comparably spec'd phones, but the true Apple fans will say, no, they're never comparably spec'd. Apple's just that much better. But that right there is a true example of the power of brand, right? That you even get the specs the same, but people will say, but they're never the same. One's just better. That's almost 100% power of brand. And here's how you see that reflected with a number, that the price premium, consumers just view it as a better product, that they're willing to pay more, even though the specs are very similar. And in these models, we're controlling for all these other features and things. So this is just the pure effect of your brand on the price you could demand.
Yep. And it's pretty quick and easy to see. You don't have to do a lot of tinkering around or playing with it to get a quick answer. Another thing that Sam mentioned is we can, these choice models, one reason why we love them is, a lot of times when you do research, that research is based on that point in time. And in 6 months from then, if the competitor landscape changes or if pricing changes or a pandemic happens, you have no idea how to react. But with these choice models, you can go in and you can say, well, my brand, they actually lowered their price a little bit. And then they also added 3D to this TV, and you can see, well, what's that going to do to the market? And you can say, well, how much share did that steal from me? How much cannibalization within them? So anyway, you can do this, I guess, kind of a competitive response. You can put in changes in the landscape. What did my competitor change? Or if I change my stuff, what does that do to the marketplace? You could also do some, let's see, what do they call it? Not gaming, but competitive response, where you can use some sort of a gaming theory, where if you maximize your price, then what does that do to the competitor? If you maximize their price, you can go back and forth and see what the competitive response is.
Yeah, you look for the Nash equilibrium on,
Yep.
given that the competitor to behave this way and it changed the market, where's the best place for us to be in this new market?
Yeah. And the last thing I want to go over really quick is optimization. Say we're brand A, we have this optimizer where we can come in and say we have two products in the market right now. Obviously, I don't want to, well, actually, I'm going to say, if we're just looking at revenue, if we're trying to maximize revenue and the only thing we want to touch is price, I can come here and say, I just want to look at price. And there's these price points I'm going to look at for product 1. And then for product 2, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm saying just change price. That's all I want to do. And I'll look at these. And I'm going to maximize my revenue for the overall subgroup, just for my general consumers. And go ahead and start that. And over here on the left, it's giving us some stats of all the different combinations and of prices that it's looking at. It's gone through 500 or 600 already, trying to maximize our revenue. I'm going to stop a little bit early. It only takes a few minutes normally. But it came back and gave us a suggestion. And down here, it will say that we've actually been able to increase our prices just a little bit and increase our revenue. We haven't lost enough people to make it so it's not profitable. So we went from 1,600 to 1,900 on product 1 and 1,200 to 1,900 on product 2. And by doing that, we didn't lose any revenue. By doing that, we've lost some share all across the board. But in general, our revenue has gone up. We've lost a little bit with the younger audience, but gained with everybody else. So these are really powerful to go in and test a ton of stuff really quickly and get a pulse of the market, get a pulse of what your consumers are driving their purchase behaviors and their decisions. And we've been doing this. I've been doing this for almost 20 years. And I'm always, well, at first I was surprised when clients would come back and say, we're surprised how accurate your simulators have been. They've actually been pretty good. I guess over time I've gotten used to it, but it's always great to hear that these things, they work and they're accurate, they're close, and it really helps our clients, and it would help you get a better pulse on your customers, your brand, your product offerings, and increase your brand value. So I can stop there. I think we're close. Go ahead, Sam.
Yeah, Todd, I was just going to add, one thing we love, though, is the flexibility, where we've been able to pair this with a lot of experimental designs. So we had a client recently that sold an additive to a current product, but they weren't sure that consumers were aware of it, even though it had a lot of benefits. they thought, would consumers still be willing to pay for this additive, product and the benefit? So we split the sample. We said, let's do a conjoint task where half the sample just gets like a brief, you know, 8-sentence or 8-word statement of what is this additive. The other group gets to watch a 30-second video explaining it. And then we could compare. And that was really important for the decision makers, because what that told them was, for the people that just got the statement, there was like a maybe 1% premium they would pay to have that additive. But for people that saw the video, there was like a 10% premium they would pay for that additive. So it really helped them see that, holy cow, we need to message this, right? We can't just assume customers know what this is, but we need to spend some time explaining the benefits of this additive. And then consumers, it looks like, are very happy to pay for it. So that was really important information for them to know what to focus on in their messaging. And we've looked at price here, we've looked at product features, but we've also done this with packaging. And Todd, what other example,
Yeah, we've done
figuring out
messaging,
like,
packaging, we've done credit card offers, park passes, we've done CPG stuff, like diapers, and you can do it with about anything you can think of. If it's something that a consumer has an opinion about, you can run a discrete choice simulator on that.
and for me, the really big one is, this is, in my mind, the best way to put a value on your brand. What's the health of our brand? We can command a 13% price premium over the nearest competitor. That's very easy to communicate, very easy to explain, and very powerful. So that's our presentation, but we just want to invite you to, if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out, because you can probably tell Todd and I love these sorts of things. We get excited about using this technology, using these models in innovative and interesting ways to solve really compelling questions. Now, are these models a little more expensive? They are, because the surveys are a little longer and whatnot. But I always tell people, you're really trying to optimize for confidence. How confident are your decision makers in the information that they have? And so these models really are the gold standard. It removes a lot of the guesswork, right? It allows them to say, hey, we have a much more informed decision. So if you'd like to get more informed about, how to do these, don't hesitate to reach out. We love talking about it. I like to say that my team's a lot of smart people that do really cool stuff. And that's really how I describe us in a sentence or not. So really, thank you for joining. And if you'd love to learn more, please reach out and contact us.
I think we're gonna stay on for a few minutes if there's any for Q&A. If there's any, just go ahead and put it in the chat. I don't know if that's open, Sam, or not.
Yeah, for those that want to stay on that maybe have questions, we're happy to answer those.
Yep.
So I'm opening up the chat to everyone right now. No, that's 2. Sorry. Aha, I have to get the right. So someone asked, is this a useful tool for brands in uncertain times? And I would say absolutely, because like me, you've probably seen a lot of reports that consumers are kind of skittish. And I don't tend to trust like just general surveys. I trust surveys obviously for a lot of information, but getting a sense on what are consumers willing to pay, like everybody's kind of claiming to cut back. So I just think those real direct survey items, just like the Van Westendorp and others, respondents tend to game those. So this gets past that. So yeah, I think even in uncertain times, to me, that would be even more reason to say, well, what's the true consumer sentiment about this? I would just qualify it though, as this gets even more important to verify that you're talking to the right people. Did we get the right sample? So just as an example, right, there's no reason to ask me what features a Ferrari would have. I'm never going to buy one unless I win the lottery or something, right? But I know that's an extreme example, but that's what we're really getting at is, I think one thing that's often overlooked in market research is really, are we talking to the right people? But yeah, I think in these uncertain times, I would even go more towards a high confidence, more robust methodology to answer these questions. Yeah, so we got another question here. What's our view on inflation providing a unique opportunity? Our view is, and this might go a little bit off of what we presented today. I mean, I think what we presented today is a useful tool for knowing how to do that. But with everybody raising prices, for us, communication becomes really important. Communicating why you're raising prices, that sort of thing. Because a lot of surveys show that it's very easy to convince consumers that it's just corporate greed. And a lot of politicians would want you to think, oh, this is corporate greed, somewhat because they want to deflect attention to maybe their own policies. Now, I'm pretty middle of the road politically, so I'm not trying to make a statement towards any side of the political aisle. But that's language you'll hear a lot is politicians kind of saying like this is 100% a result of corporate greed. So I think there's a huge opportunity for brands to communicate well, things like, hey, we're sorry we have to do this, but we can't deliver the type of quality you've come to expect, given that our costs have come up. Or, just messaging like that, like we're in this together, I think goes a long way for helping consumers kind of absorb that cost to show that, you're really still loyal to them. Hey, we didn't want to raise prices, but in this environment, we have to. We recognize that that's hard on you as a consumer. It's hard on us as a company, but we thank you for your business. I think that becomes even more critical in a time like this. So yeah, I appreciate the question. And I think in a lot of ways, even though consumers might not be as open with their wallets, I think they're understanding because they're seeing that the cost of materials are up, those sorts of things. So I don't know. I just think it's even more important to get it right, to understand how much could we raise prices? What's the most strategic way to raise prices, especially given the behaviors of competitors?
I was just to jump in, Sam. I've been watching the Tesla change how they've reduced the price in Tesla. I just noticed that Ford has responded. They've reduced their Mach E, which is a direct competitor to their Model Y, to Tesla's Model Y.
Hmm.
So they've reduced the Mach E by $4,500, most likely because they saw that Tesla was going to gain a bunch of share, and for them to keep the share that they currently had, they would need to do some sort of reaction as well. And I wouldn't be surprised if they used some sort of analytical model to come up with that number. It wasn't just a number they pulled out of the hat.
Right.
So competitive response is a big thing too, especially with inflation. If our competitors have inflated their prices and we feel like we need to as well, how much can we do it, and what makes sense? So these tools are great for that.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for your participation. Todd and I, like I said, we really enjoy this. We love talking about it. You could get us both talking for quite a while. Uh, Not that you'd want to, but it'd still be fun. So thank you for your time.